So back in The Sims, I introduced this character called Constance Pated. She's an old lady, she's a widow in my Widow Creek save file, and I never really used her for very much. I was gonna play live mode with her, but I'll be honest, I find The Sims live mode kind of empty feeling, and I couldn't be bothered downloading a bunch of mods for it. So Constance is now gonna go for a small facelift, because I figured why not bring her into InZOI? And here she is, pretending she can use a phone. She can't, don't trust her. But she's currently homeless, so I'm going to need to build her a bungalow, and I thought I would try and sort of replicate this one that I did in The Sims. I'm also going to build a conservatory in this build by slamming my head against my PC really hard, so stay tuned for that. But Constance does now have, for the purpose of lack of decorating, an interest in collecting art, specifically around animals dressed in human clothes, which I believe is how furries used to express themselves in the 1960s before they had rights. And Constance just felt she was a little bit too old for the big furry revolution of the 2010s. Also, this furry next door is moving even though the game is paused, so I think that might be a bug. So while I'm building this shell, I thought I would just go over a few facts about Constance, since this is specifically for her. She's kind of inspired by my nana, who she was kind of crazy. I'm just gonna say that. And her name especially is a little bit inspired by my nana. She wasn't called Constance, but if you saw her, she would say, "How are you?" And she was so like sweet and lovely. And you'd go, "Oh, I'm good, Nana. How are you?" And she'd go, "Yeah, I'm good." And there'd be a pause, and then she'd normally also add, "A bit constipated." So I had to name Constance Pated for that reason. She also lived in a bungalow, which is very much like the one we're going to build. This is somewhat of an homage to my nana, and how kind of bonkers she was, really. But I did come across a bug kind of early on doing this that I thought I would show you, where it's not allowing me to connect these vertical walls where it should be, because bungalows often have these little like protrusions where the windows are. It's because the room was already built. Bizarrely, it wasn't allowing me to do that. So I found that if I just deleted the floor, it then worked. So if you run into that kind of problem, just maybe delete the floor and it might fix it. So I'm going to go through and put all of the doors in of where I want them to be in this build. I was also doing this to kind of check that the distances between the rooms that I had kept in this build were actually door friendly and they weren't too small. We're going to have a different door for the back because that's where the conservatory is going to be. And normally that's been built onto the house. So that's going to be a previous like back door that's now inside. But we're going to move on to first attempt of the conservatory. And this, I kind of knew this was going to be hard right from the get-go. A conservatory, if you do not know, they're very popular in the UK. And they like these glass rooms that people build on as extensions. It's like very, very middle class extension that you add a conservatory to the back of your house. And I don't know if they have them in other countries. They probably do, but the UK ones are very like the UK British people go very crazy for their conservatories. I'm stuck with windows here because there aren't full length windows. So I placed these short length sort of windows in to begin with, and just mapped out where I wanted the conservatory to be before moving on to make some slight adjustments to the rear of the house. So I'm adding in this paving area, and we're going to move around and adjust this rear sort of protrusion area because it wasn't fitting windows. This is the other thing as well, because you can build the walls at whatever length, but it doesn't mean it's going to fit a window because the windows are preset widths in this game. So sometimes you have to make slight adjustments. So I'm going to have to do the same thing kind of here at the front as well. I have to delete the floors because it has that bug that doesn't let me connecting the walls in that way unless I remove the floors. But it's not too bad. Kind of, I expect bugs in this early access stage. But I've mapped out where all the windows are going to be, and luckily all of the doors fit. So I'm just going to add a little entrance porch area here, dividing that corridor up a bit, because these British bungalows tend to have this like little porch. It's always tiny, so you can't do much with it, but it's there. I also wanted to add a archway in the living room, but there's no archways in the game currently, so I sort of mocked one up using the walls. And I'm going to shuffle this build around a little bit because I realized I'd made some of these rooms too big. The ones at the side here are going to be a kitchen and a sort of like dining room, which Constance doesn't use as a dining room. She just uses it as like a clutter room for sewing and various things. And a few wall adjustments here at the front. And again, this was quite easy to do. I don't find it too difficult to adjust the walls in this game. However, the next part that we're going to move on to is the roofs, which were trouble. And I had such a big plan here on the conservatory where I was going to build these roof pieces, and then I was going to replace the texture with glass to make like a glass ceiling, and I realized that, oh, that's not an option. So then I tried to cheese the system by typing in transparent glass in the texture creator, but the game said no, you're not allowed to do that. So then I tried again, asking it specifically for a roof with an opacity slider, and that didn't work either. So we're gonna have a flat roof, which is fine. There are conservatories with flat roofs. I didn't want a flat roof. I wanted a nice a nice one that has a gradient to it, but you know, we're just gonna have to make do here. So this is just a plain glass roof, and right now it looks stupid, but we'll move on and sort that out. But I thought I would do the rest of the roofs first. And this is where the trouble came, because the roofs, they're really not that great. They're not that great right now in this game. They don't really interact that well with each other, and they don't really line up that well with each other either. So a lot of this is just complete trial and error of seeing which arrows and sliders and various things on each of the roof pieces I can change to make them align a bit better. And there was no real easy way to do this, to be honest. Other than moving things around a lot. Raising up the heights sort of helped me align them a bit more, but I think it also doesn't really help that this build's a bit zigzaggy and it's not the easiest roof setup in the first place. But I did kind of just cut to this where I've sort of done the best that I can by making all these little adjustments. It's not too bad. There's obviously some areas where you can see that there's lines showing and things don't overlap perfectly, but it's not too bad. I thought it would come out worse than it did. So now we're going to move on to the front garden for adding some walls in, and I realized you can't really pick where you want the pillars to be on the walls, so I cheesed this again. I'm just cheesing a lot of things in this build by building some extra little wall pieces, and it kind of worked. It kind of looks fine. If you zoom in, it's quite obvious what I've done, but if you're just glancing at it, it looks fine. So now we're going to move on to doing a bit of texturing. And these bungalows in the UK, they often have like gravel at the front of them. So I wanted this gravel texture. And I don't know why they have gravel rather than lawns. I guess people just can't be bothered mowing them, so they have gravel here instead. So that's what we're doing here. And I was a bit confused about what I was able to do with the floors at this point. This was a bit of a learning curve because I have used them before, but this was the first time I tried to do something very deliberate with them. And I thought I could place this fence in the middle to separate them, to place a different texture on each. And I did it here to try and create a pathway. And I even made a nice little like flagstone texture. But the issue is when you then delete the fences that separate these wall areas, it just randomly picks one of the textures and fills the entire area back in. So I sort of tried to problem solve a bit here and drew some extra walls to then try and delete a very narrow floor piece between each, but then that would leave a gap, and I realized that this was getting just far too annoying than what I was prepared to do. So I just separated two pieces with a little gap and then placed these actual like flagstone pieces down on the floor. And I think I probably could have maybe adjusted this by using the deselect area tool piece by piece in the textures, but I just couldn't be bothered at this point. I was too over it. Now luckily the doors were far easier because we can like color pick, and those worked fine. So coloring all of these doors in, I'm going to do them white because most British houses have these white doors inside them that are just like plain painted white. And that was easy, very simple to do. I just used a very simple white swatch. And then this is where I discovered that there was a random roof piece that had suddenly decided it no longer identified it as a second floor roof piece and was now a first floor roof piece. So I let that be for a while. I do end up just moving it and putting it on the floor above again. I don't know why it did that, but there we go. Moving on, and just painting all of these windows this white color, making sure everything's all like unified so we can move on. And then for the wall, I just used this basic sort of brick swatch and changed the pattern scale a little bit, which did then cause me a problem because I had to then copy and paste the specific number of the pattern scale for every wall piece. So I don't show you that here. I'm just going to move on and do the roof. which is just a little bit of just picking. There's quite a few options here for the roof, so I just wanted to make something that looked like it. It blended nicely, keeping that trim nice and white. This is very much like British bungalow vibe. So now I've gone around, I've done all of the roofs, done all of the walls, and we're going to move on to my second attempt at making the conservatory look like a conservatory, because the game does not want me to do that. There's nothing in this game that helps you build like glass rooms or anything other than the glass texture. So that's the kind of first thing I've done here, is that I've changed the walls to be glass, and then I'm trying to separate them and make this look like they're windows by using these columns. And this was all very trial and error to see how it would look and how it would turn out. And I end up having to sort of change the columns a bit, but we've basically just got this glass box divided by columns right now. So then I deleted the windows to try and find something different, and I came across this other bug. Because this wall has at some point decided that I cannot place a window here anymore. As you can see, it's really weird. So all I did to amend this was I just adjusted the wall size one notch and then did it back again. And whatever this does, it makes the game sort of recalculate the wall, and then it fixed it. So if you run into anything like that, maybe just adjust the wall size and it should hopefully help a bit. We're also going to run into a second issue here, which again, I had a little workaround for. When I extended the wall, you can see there's like a line in the wall at the front where it's instead made a second wall and not really connected them properly, and that wasn't allowing me to place a window on here. So the way that I, fixed this really was just by redrawing over the wall to kind of tell the game that this is one wall, and then that helped, that fixed it, that was fine. So again, just these little bugs that keep popping up, but so far they all seem fairly easy to sort of work around by getting it to rethink what it's doing. And then I thought these windows were really nice, really conservatory looking, so I went with these ones, which meant sort of redoing the walls because I had that issue again. But we're going to place all of these windows, and then that's sort of like the final exterior of how I thought I wanted this conservatory. It was looking like a conservatory at this point, so I'm going to place the pillars back in, and everything's just sort of clear transparent glass now. And I don't know why British people love conservatory so much, because they're too hot half the year, because the glass just heats it up when the sun's on it, and then the other half of the year they're freezing cold because the glass doesn't insulate them very well. So you have about a month in like spring and autumn where people might sit in the conservatory, and the rest of the time we all just avoid it because it's too hot or too cold. I wanted to sort of customize the roof a bit because it was looking just like it was a silly glass roof. So I was picking up items to see what I could do to make it look like it had some kind of edge around it where like a gutter would be or something. So first of all, I'm using these wall shelves, and I'm just sticking them right underneath the glass roof to sort of create an edge for it. And placing these was fairly simple because you can just overlap them with Alt and it works fine. So I'm placing those around, going around doing that. But you can see that I'm then going to sort of double up with this effect by using these, I think they're like shower drains or something, and you can layer these up. The problem with these is you cannot layer them on top of each other. It's one of those items that has a limitation when you hold Alt, so there is a small gap in there, but it's not really noticeable, so I thought that was fine. And then the last thing I'm going to do is, because normally these conservatory roofs have different glass panes in them that are separated, so I've actually ended up getting some ceiling lights that have a very sort of flat bulb in them. I've knocked them down to 0% brightness, which you do in the texture editor, and then by lining them up, I've just sort of created the facade that there's some separate panes in this conservatory. And by the end of this, I thought this was actually really good for an attempt in a game where there's not really a single feature that is for making conservatories in it. So now we're going to move on to the garden, and this bit, I will grant you, is a little bit long. So if you're not into gardens and you want to skip ahead to the next timestamp, that's fine. But maybe you are into gardens, maybe you're like a millennial who's realised that there's not much left in the world to do other than grow vegetables in a garden. So if you do want to stay, we're going to go through and I'm going to show you how to like layer up some foliage in a nice way. So now that everyone else is cleared off and we're just left with the plant millennials, the doomsday preppers and the flower girlies, we'll go around and we're going to do some hedges around this house and layer them up with these planter boxes, and also some of the actual hedge tree items are in the tree menu. So this garden is very much inspired by the one that my nana used to have. In fact, the whole bungalow really is inspired on my nana's bungalow, which I used to go to when I was a kid. The animal pictures that we end up with are also sort of loosely based on my nana, who had a bizarre obsession with pigs. Pigs were her favourite animal, I'm still not sure why. But she would have pigs all around the house, like pictures and little stuffed pig toys, and also very randomly a stuffed Teletubby in her hallway, Lala, the yellow one, because her favorite color was yellow. But I still don't really know how Lala was, how that came about. I really don't know. And because my nana was very into her plants, Constance is also very into her plants. She goes out here a lot to do all of her little gardening work, and even actually when I did a little test to make sure that she could navigate through this build, that she was just constantly going in the garden. So I think she's already very naturally into nature and wants to be in the outdoors. So we're putting a little chair here for her, which does change into one of these plastic ones, so she can sit and just view the garden, and she even did that as well without me telling her to. So I think this garden was very much Constance approved. But we're gonna have this very basic plastic chairs and things, because she just went and bought the cheapest one at the garden centre, because she's kind of thrifty and likes to save money. Putting in some of these grass swatches which you can't overlap, which is a shame, but there we go. These are the plants you can overlap, so we're gonna layer some of them up. And the kind of garden palette, I guess I'll call it, of flowers and foliage in this game is a bit more tropical than in The Sims, and it's especially very tropical looking for a British garden. So I was a little bit limited into which ones I could use without making it look too much like a tropical garden rather than a British one. So I've used a lot of hedges and a lot of flowers and just sort of overlapped them to make the foliage look more like flowery bushes rather than sort of tropical flowers. There's obviously roses and things as well, which are very, you know, hardy in all sorts of different environments. But I'm just going to layer some of these flowers into the bushes to make it look like they're a little bit in bloom. And I'm going to build up this section next to the house, because this is going to be the bin storage. And in the UK, we have like 700 different coloured bins outside now, which are all for different recycling purposes. And they all get picked up and cleaned on various different weeks, and it's all very complicated. It's honestly quite a big stress for me of knowing what bin is meant to go outside on which bloody day, and which ones they're going to collect and which ones they aren't, and then managing how much waste we have and if there's room for another week before they pick up the bins. It's very stressful. It's very silly. I'm going to put some rocks in here because I just wanted to add a bit more detail, and in my head I thought, you know, maybe these are some rocks that like some builders have left. And Constance doesn't actually like these rocks being here. She just whines about it all the time. Anytime someone comes over, she's like, oh, you seen those rocks the builders have just left down the side? They've not done anything with them. But, you know, it's all about building the character. When I'm decorating, I like to sort of build the character and how does the character react to this. I get a bit too into it. I'm going to extend this pathway down very easily using the room tool to extend it. And we have this quite fresh lawn in the middle, which I've left because I feel like she would quite like having a nice clean looking lawn. But then I'm just going to build up a hedge, which, you know, ideally I would like a hedge fence piece or something. But without that, it's quite easy to kind of build up a hedge using the different hedge pieces in the game. Now, I also got these I think they're fences. And I realized if you put a few of them next to each other, they kind of look a bit like lattices for growing plants up them. So I've just placed a few of those in the garden as well. And placed a few bushes around them to make it look like there's some kind of plants there getting ready to grow up them and use them as a bit of support or something. I've also placed some sort of patio planters and things. And moving around to the front of the house, I've done a very similar thing. And we're just going to place a doorbell, a ring doorbell, so that Constance can know when to hide behind the curtains and pretend that she's not home. And also, I don't know if this is a fire alarm or a burglar alarm or what. I just know I've seen them on the front of bungalows, so we just put that in there as well. So this is the house. Well, the exterior. I do add a tiny bit more to this, not a whole lot more. But it's very neat. It's very British bungalow, which I didn't know if I would be able to pull off, but it turned out alright, I think. So we're going to move on. And we're going to do the actual decorating inside, starting with the bedroom. And I made a pattern for this, which I wanted to be very much in like the 90s in the UK. Everyone had this same wall. It was a wallpaper, and it's white, and it has like these raised flowers coming out of it. And that's what I was trying to make but the AI didn't really understand what I was trying to say, I don't think. So I just had to make do with this other flowery texture that it came out with. But I've already put a bed and stuff in here and sort of mapped out what I want to use. And I'm using some of these built-in sort of cupboard pieces to sort of build up this built-in bedroom. We're going to give her a dressing table and a mirror, and then we're going to have a selection of different surfaces under the window. And then I also wanted this little sort of sitting area because my nana had one of those in her bedroom. And then she's got this ensuite, and this is where the differing wall lengths compared to like The Sims comes in a bit more tricky, because sometimes you'll make a room and you don't know that everything's going to fit in there. And I had this occur when we move on to the kitchen a bit as well. But I did manage to get all three of the things I wanted in this ensuite in here, the sink, the toilet, and the shower. I just had to sort of squish them together a bit. And I think they're functional. I think she can use them. I have seen her sort of moving into the bathroom. But I had to get rid of that window though, because the shower, there's like a shower rail sticking through the window, so that was looking stupid. So she's just gonna have no windows in the bathroom, Constance. Maybe that's better. Maybe she doesn't want a window in the bathroom. I'm gonna decorate this little bit with some toilet paper and various other things. There's not a lot of clutter in this game, but the clutter that is in the game is nice. I do like it. Now, I've been through and I've sort of textured all of this, because I realized that texturing isn't that interesting to watch when it's recorded, because you can't really see a whole lot of what's going on when it's all happening down down in the texture bar. So I have gone and textured all this sort of off camera and come in. And she's obviously got carpet in the ensuite. There's carpet everywhere. There's carpet in this bathroom and utilities room that we're now moving on to, because old ladies just for some reason had carpet in every room in the house in the UK. So that's what we're doing. So this is going to be a combination of a bathroom and a sort of washing machine. In the UK, we call them utilities rooms, where it's a bathroom, but you've also allocated that room as like the washing laundry room as well. So I'm just filling that in with various different surfaces and utilities. There's a mop. There's obviously the washing machine, the sort of towels and things. It's more like the working bathroom. An iron, and normally there would be an ironing board, but I don't think there's one in the game yet. And this is all going to be blue, because this is also going to be a really old bathroom suite. And again, in the like 90s, everyone just had coloured bathrooms. And I don't know why. They had carpet in the bathrooms, and the bathrooms were all like, literally the bath was all purely one colour, like this blue I've gone for. But it could have been pink, it could have been green, like the whole bathroom was that colour. Moving on to the dining room. And again, Constance sort of doesn't really use this purely as a dining room. This is going to be her like sewing room, her listening to the radio room, her doing all sorts of bits and bobs and arts and crafts room. She also has a desk in here that doesn't match any of her other furnishings, because I thought, you know, maybe she's been just given a desk by a relative at some point in the hopes that she might get a computer, but she never got a computer, so she just has a computer desk and a computer chair, but no computer. And I ended up putting a sewing station on there for her instead. But she's got all of this old furniture, this very old like dark wood furniture. I am texturing this one as I go through this one. And then we're going to move on next door to the kitchen. And this is where, again, I sort of had that issue where so in The Sims, we're used to any wall length being able to fit kitchen cabinets, because the kitchen cabinets are equal to one wall length. However, being able to make smaller walls in this game means that you potentially made a room that isn't actually going to fit the kitchen cabinets, which is why I've had to just place another wall in there. And ideally I wouldn't have to do that, but I had to, so we're just going to pretend there's like pipes in there or something. But she's going to have this old kitchen, again with these square carpet tiles, which are another staple of kind of older British houses where the carpets aren't even in one piece. They're literally just carpet tiles that have been put together and cut to fit the room. We're going to have these shelves in here, nudging the windows over a little bit just so that I can, again, fit where things are going to be and go. And I couldn't find a kettle at this point, which is very important for a British house, especially a bungalow with an old lady in it, because I feel like she purely drinks tea. That's just her like main beverage. But I do find one later, so there will be a kettle in here at the end. And I'm going to dye all of these this very dark wood colour. this sort of like very old antique furniture looking dark wood, which I believe my mum says this dark wood is coming back into style. I can't say I believe her, but according to her it is, so you know, we'll see. I personally don't really like the dark wood, but whatever. And I thought, you know what, Constance is definitely going to have a carpet rug over her carpet in this kitchen. That's a very Constance thing to do. So now we're going to move on to the hallway and just put a couple of things in here. She's got some like old cabinets and things that she's placed in the hallway. One of these sort of like narrow tables. I'm going to put a mirror above that. And I will come through and clutter all of this at the end. I'm not going to show you all of the cluttering because it's very back and forth. So we'll see all that at the end. And we're going to move on to the living room. And the living room is where I really wanted to try and make one of these old style bungalow fireplaces. Now that we have these very fine wall lengths that we're able to do in InZOI, it was the first time that I'd actually been able to attempt this. I couldn't do this in The Sims. But these old style British fireplaces, it's like they decided the fireplace wasn't enough and they needed to make extra fireplace around the fireplace. And I'm not sure what the purpose of that was. We call them like mantelpieces, but these old fireplaces are always surrounded by extra brickwork and tiles. I guess it's just sort of like a design feature. But I was able to finally do that using these really narrow walls and platforms in the game, and it's really nice to be able to do something like that. I'm gonna place in some like a sofa set and a few armchairs, one in front of the TV because she can't hear that well. Constance can't hear that well, so she needs to sit right in front of it to watch her game shows. We're gonna put in another rug, and we're gonna have this extra dining room, but Constance doesn't use this one. This is like her fancy dining room. Like old people always have two sets of cutlery and things, don't they? Where they have the ones that they're using and then this fancy set that you're not allowed to touch, otherwise they think like the world's gonna end. So she has this fancy dining area. So this is it sort of finished, and I'm gonna go through. I'm gonna texture this, and no, never mind. We're going on to the conservatory. I forgot about the conservatory. But we're gonna just I decided that this will be the one room that Constance is allowed that I'm gonna allow her to have this one look a little more modern and a little more stylish and not just full of all of her old furnishings and items. Although right now it currently still has those stupid carpet tiles on them. She is gonna get a wood floor by the end of this. And another rug. And this is gonna be a sort of plant room by the end. I'm gonna go through and clutter it full of plants. But here you can see I've allowed her to have a more stylish wooden floor and a bit of green, a bit of colour in this room, and I just love how this looks from the inside. It's very conservatory. If you're British, is that not a conservatory? Anyway, this is now the finished build at the end. I've added a few more details to it, and Constance is there outside, tapping herself for some reason, because I guess she's just self-soothing. She's a bit overwhelmed by her new bungalow, and she's gonna go in. But before we follow her inside, I'm gonna show you the back. And I didn't add a whole lot to this, but one thing I did do that I want to show you is I actually used the 3D printing tool in a bit of a weird way. And if you can see, there's now soil underneath the plants. And that's because I decided I would scan in a picture of some soil and see what happened. And I've actually been able to make this soil. And it is shiny because everything that comes out of the 3D printing thing currently is a bit weird and shiny. But all I did is sort of widen this a bit and then lowered it into the ground. And it's a bit like, it's kind of a soil tile. It kind of worked. I was surprised. Anyway, here's Constance. She's checking out her new house. I don't know what's in the box. I'm not sure she does either. But you can see I've added some pictures. We're going to go around and look. It was so adorable. She just looked so happy. Playing this and seeing her in it gave me so much joy that I've not really felt in a live sim for a while. But here's the living room. And as I explained, she is a bit of a collector of artwork that includes animals dressed like people. So we have all of these pigs on the wall. She's also got lots of fireplace clutter, some mismatched candles. The music is on the radio. That's the first thing she put on for some reason. And I don't know, I just feel like I can really smell that 2-year-old air freshener block in this room. I can almost like hear the crinkle of the long expired potpourri. I just really like it. It's so adorable. It's such old lady house with like the rabbits in hats and things. Someone else must know an old lady who just has loads of like statues of rabbits in hats and random things like that. And then we've got a chicken at the end of the corridor who's just done some groceries next to the hat stand, which I thought was very necessary. We're gonna go move into the kitchen. So I've added the kettle is now there, and a few like pots and things. A calendar which presumably always stays on January. And then she has these sheep pictures, and these sheep pictures are like a collector's set. Like they came as a 2. She was very happy to receive those. So she's here in a little sewing tat room, which is full of all sorts of nonsense. And she's at the desk where there is no PC, but there is a sewing machine. And here's this hen looking fabulous. We've got some books and some other pieces of clutter. There's some like a printer in here or something she's shoved under the desk, and she don't know how to use it, but she got given that. And now into the bathroom where we have the toilet animals on the wall, which I had to get. I just felt like I found them on Pinterest. It's probably all either stolen art or AI art. It's probably mostly AI if it's off Pinterest, to be honest, but I'm not that bothered because the game doesn't have any art swatches, so you have to sort of upload your own. Into the bedroom with this lovely view outside, and my favorite pictures are above this bed. That cow is just, it's the best picture in the house. And that rabbit. Oh, but this turned out so nice. That cute little elephant. And here's a little ensuite. And we'll go back through and into the conservatory as the last little room, which I've put some plants in. And I don't know, this is just, it's so British. This is so British bungalow, and I was surprised I was able to do it in InZOI when there's not really much in here designed to be British bungalow, but I made it work. I forced it. I banged my head against my PC, and we have these cows. I'm going to show you this from above, how the house looks from above with all the layout. And then I'm going to leave you with Constance here, who appears to be having some kind of dissociative meltdown. I think I would be the same if I got upscaled and had a few more wrinkles. I am going to be doing a Sims build next, but I'm also going to be playing some InZOI, and I will probably do a playthrough on Constance to try and explore live mode. And who knows, maybe I will just fill this whole world with old ladies. I do feel like I kind of want to do that. But thank you so much for watching. Be kind to yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.